Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to Satin Creditcare Network Limited Q1 FY22 earnings conference call. This conference call may contain forward-looking statements about the company, which are based on the beliefs, opinions, and expectations of the company as on date of this call. These statements are not the guarantees of future performance and involves risk and uncertainties that are difficult to predict. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star then 0 on your touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Mr. H.P. Singh, Chairman and Managing Director of Satin Creditcare Network Limited, to give his opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for taking our time to discuss our Q1 FY22 financial performance. I hope you have received our quarterly results and investor presentation by now. For those who have not, you can view them on our website and stock exchange. I hope you and your family are keeping safe amid the ongoing COVID-19 wave. During the second half of the previous financial year, early signs of economic revival became visible with the easing of lockdown restrictions, recovery of economic activities, and vaccination drives in India and throughout the world. However, as the vaccination drive started and the economy saw signs of recovery from the wounds of the pandemic, a much bigger second wave of COVID-19 struck again in the middle of April 21, bringing back the lockdown restrictions in almost all parts of the country. As guided earlier, Q1 FY22 was anticipated to be a challenging quarter as rising COVID-19 infections and the resultant economic impact led to a halt in the recovery the sector was witnessing in the last quarter of FY21. The company has adopted a well-calibrated and cautious approach for and in disbursing new loans. Over the years, we have grown steadily and have demonstrated our resilience even in times of adversity faced by the business and the industry. Going ahead, we expect this growth momentum to continue, and for the full year FY22, anticipate an AUM growth of 8 to 10% along with working towards enhancing the portfolio quality. Additionally, the company is well capitalized with a CAR of 24% and balance sheet liquidity of rupees 1,497 crores, which makes us well positioned and agile to achieve the anticipated growth over the medium to long term. On our collection, we faced some challenges on the ground due to regional lockdowns, restrictions which led to some drop in our collection efficiency for the quarter. However, as the cases have started to decline and more population is being vaccinated, one big positive is that now these restrictions have been lifted in the major parts of the areas where we operate, and we are seeing a gradual uptick in our collection efficiency on a sequential basis. Overall, the collection efficiency of Q1 FY22 stood at a reasonable 82%, which was 85% excluding Assam, while collection efficiency for the month of July stood at 87%, 89% excluding Assam. Our non-paying client stood at 5.1% as on June 21. The improvement signifies our robust underwriting and collection framework as well as the resilience of our customers. As a holistic institution, the company has always envisaged empowering underserved customers through our customized financial solutions across the value chain and build progressive opportunities for the lesser privileged section across India. One such initiative was to disburse 87,000 bicycles to women in association with Hero Cycles. This initiative aims to enhance the mobility and livelihood of these women, which in turn will provide them better access to education, healthcare, and employment, thus promoting gender equality. In the near term, with the asset quality anticipated to get better with better repayments and collection efficiency getting closer to normalized levels, we expect a significant revival of the sector, and Satin being one of the leading players in the industry is expected to bounce back strongly. Let me run through the financial and operational highlights of our company. Our AUM as on 30th June 2021 stood at 7,464 crores. As on 30th June, we have a customer base of around 30 lakhs, which is one of the highest in the industry. Our disbursement for the quarter stood at rupees 282 crores as compared to rupees 67 crores in Q1 FY21 and rupees 2,376 crores in Q4 FY21. Our assigned portfolio stood at rupees 1,093 crores. During the quarter, we have adopted a cautious approach in our new disbursements because rising infection and the resultant economic impact due to the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. Standalone disbursement for the quarter stood at rupees 222 crores as compared to 54 crores in Q1 FY21 and rupees 2,084 crores in Q4 FY21. Disbursement for July was rupees 260 crores. However, we expect disbursement activity to pick up as more population gets vaccinated and the economy rebounds from the pandemic. As on 30th June 2021, 100% of our disbursements are made through cashless mode, while cashless collections stood at 9%. We have also adopted website payments options and UPI auto debit. Net interest income for Q1 FY22 stood at rupees 180 crores as against 150 crores in Q1 FY21. For Q1 FY22, our pre-provisioning operating profit stood at rupees 57 crores as compared to rupees 50 crores in Q1 FY21. We have made provisions of rupees 434 crores on account of COVID-19 pandemic and other external factors. Our cost to income ratio stood at 62.9%, while our OPEX to GLP ratio stood at 5.8%. These ratios are temporarily high due to lower volumes. We hope to reduce our cost to income ratio as well as our OPEX to GLP in the coming quarters. Coming to our collection efficiency, our collection efficiency trends are as follows. April was 93%, May was 75%, June was 80%, July was 87%, August till date is 90%. We are seeing improvement in repayments and collection month on month. Collection efficiency for the quarter stood at 82% and excluding Assam stood at 84%. The Assam development will also bring a lot of relief for the sector and for Satin. 95% of our MFI customers have paid at least one installment in June 2021. We are also witnessing consistent improvement in customers that have made full payment. We have a well-diversified customer base, well-penetrated branch network across states and 75% rural exposure. On-book GNPA stands at 9.7%. On account of COVID-19 outbreak, we have made adequate provisioning of 8.4%, bringing our NNPA to 1.2% as compared to 3.3% in Q4 FY21. As of 30th June 2021, our total branch network count stood at 1,264 branches, which is one of the highest in the industry. Our branch network is spread across 391 districts. We have adopted a very cautious approach in selecting the newer geographies and opening and closing of branches and expanding into newer geographies. We have a total state and UTs count of 23, which makes us a well-diversified pan-India microfinance player. As of 30th June 2021, 97.7% of our districts have less than 1% of portfolio exposure, which we aim to bring it down further. No district has more than 2% AUM. We have seen a significant reduction in our portfolio risk in terms of average exposure per district, 0.26% in Q1 FY22 versus 0.45% in FY17. Exposure to top 10 districts as a percentage of AUM is 13% in Q1 FY22 versus 21% in FY17. Exposure to top 4 states contributes 52.6% in Q1 FY22 from 77.3% in FY17. Our well-thought diversification strategy has helped us sail through challenging situations and leverage our idea of cross-sell products. We've been able to disburse close to rupees 67 crores during FY21, rupees 12 crores during Q1 FY22 under the product financing category, which includes loans for bicycles, solar products, home appliances, consumer durables, and water and sanitation. On liquidity and capitalization, our capital adequacy as on 30th June 2021 stood at 24%, which is well above the regulatory requirement. Till date, the company did a fundraise of rupees 396 crores. The company continues to maintain a healthy balance sheet liquidity with rupees 1,497 crores of surplus fund as on 30th June 2021 and has undrawn sanctions worth rupees 135 crores as on date. To bolster the company's capital position, we successfully raised 120 crores via the right issue in August 2020 with an overwhelming response. Issue was oversubscribed at 123%. Out of this, rupees 90 crores have already been received by the company, rupees 45 per share out of rupees 60. Also, final call of rupees 30 crores in this regard has been made, whereby call payment period has begun on 6th August and will end on 20th August 2021. The update on subsidiaries is the business correspondent services under Taraashna Financial Services has reached an AUM of 671 crores. As of 30th June 2021, the company operates through 213 branches, has more than 3.7 lakh active loan clients. Satin Finserv, our MSME arm, reached an AUM of 125 crores. Satin Housing Finance Limited has now an AUM of 224 crores, including DA of about 20 crores, and having presence across 4 states with 2,401 customers. Satin Housing has 100% retail book comprising of 79% affordable housing loans and 21% of LAP. The company has 10 active lenders through including NHB refinance. CAR is 95.8% and gearing of 1.3x. Total equity stands at rupees 93 crores. 3 consecutive profitable quarters, 0 NPA since inception, and more than 3 years of operation, stable team, a good system in process, strong credit and risk parameters. The board of directors of 2 wholly owned subsidiaries of the company, Taraashna Financial Services Limited and Satin Finserv Limited, at their respective meetings have considered and approved a draft scheme of arrangement for amalgamation of Taraashna Financial Services Limited, the transfer company, with Satin Finserv Limited, the transferee company, and their respective shareholders and creditors scheme under Section 230 to 232 of the Companies Act 2013 and other applicable provisions of the Act and rules made thereunder. The strategic amalgamation will have multiple synergies such as combined entity to efficiently use the capital invested in the 2 entities and leverage the same. Currently, the revenue sharing arrangement with TFSL and SFL is taxable. In the combined entity, tax benefits will accrue to the business. Taraashna has significantly wider distribution reach than SFL. The combined entity can leverage on their distribution. There will be cost rationalization post-merger. Post-merger, SFL can introduce new products. Post-merger, the merged entity will focus on both on-book lending and BC business. With this, I would like to open the floor for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may please press star, then 1 on their touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star, then 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. To ask a question, please press star, then 1. The first question is from the line of Rishikesh Oza from Robo Capital. Please go ahead. Rishikesh Oza from Robo Capital, your line is unmuted. Please unmute from your side and proceed.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Yeah, you are.
Oh, okay. Hi, sir. I have 2 questions from my side. So first one is that what will be the credit cost for the full year? And second one is when can we expect the AUM to grow back to kind of 20 to 25% kind of levels?
So what we are envisaging for the whole year, the credit cost to be around 4% odd. This is what we are looking at the ground situation, and that is what is coming out to be in terms of our numbers. In terms of our growth of about 20% in double digits, technically would be from FY23 onwards, because what we feel is post the pandemic, I think, whatever has happened is all over now, So if you're looking at the past 4 to 5 years track record, I think, demonetization, the Assam problem, and then pandemic 1 and pandemic 2. Technically, we feel that now the ground and we are all ready for the growth which is going to come in. FY23 is going to be our full-blown growth year. We are still looking at about close to about 7 to 8% growth this year also, as the disbursement has started picking up. So we feel that the numbers of about 20 to 25% will probably be achievable in FY23.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stanford.
Sorry, apologies for this. Participants who would like to ask questions, please press star, then 1. The next question is from the line of Dhwanit Savla, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Hello, sir. Am I audible?
Hi.
Sir, my first question was with regards to the kind of distribution of collection we have within the state. Is there some kind of a pattern we can see that there are certain states where there is a low collection efficiency and which have been more COVID hit, and the others where it is being better? Because as I can see that UP has had a relatively better than compared to like a Bihar or an MP collection efficiency. And my second question is with regards to our future outlook. I mean, are we looking at increasing our AUM more than more than double digits? I think so currently a double digit kind of a growth in our AUM for this current year.
So I think, let me answer the first question to you first. If you look at the whole topography, I think the top 4 states technically, which is UP, Bihar, Punjab and Madhya Pradesh. UP, our collection efficiency for July was 96%. The collection efficiency for what you said, Bihar, was also at 96%. Punjab was at 92%. The only little bit dampener was in July was Madhya Pradesh, which was at about 84%, and that had a reason technically because Madhya Pradesh, the lockdown started first and ended up the last amongst all these states. So if you look at the configuration of our collection efficiency, probably in the larger states, which all these 4 states constitute close to about 53% of our AUM, it is on an average about 94%. All 4 states put together. The second dampeners wherever slightly was Assam. So if you take out, and that's the reason why we gave you some metrics on the Assam figures also. If Assam starts coming back, which we think, it will be because of whatever is there by the announced by the state government in terms of the budget provisions which are going to come in. I think, this collection efficiency will also rise further, The second question of yours, we are anticipating a single digit growth, that's why I said, it will be close to about 7 to 8% for this year. But having gone through this whole trials and tribulations and whatever the pandemic has probably thrown us, I think we are probably now ready to look at FY23 on a double digit growth, and we will prepare our budgets once we close the FY22, but definitely yes, it is going to be in double digits, definitely for FY23. But this year we are looking at about a 7 to 8% growth.
Thank you very much, and all the best for the coming quarter.
Thank you.
Thank you. Participants, to ask a question, please press star, then 1. The next question is from the line of Nidhesh Jain from Investec. Please go ahead.
Sir, 2 questions, sir. Firstly, in Assam, sir, can you share some data? How is the collection efficiency trend is panning out after the announcement of that resolution plan by the state government? And by when we expect that collection efficiency or money to be received from the government and leading to a improvement in asset quality in the Assam portfolio. And second is, what was the rationale of merging the entities, which I think we have created these entities, some of the entities for business correspondent purpose. So do we think that the nature of the business that we were doing that to that entity will get impacted of the merger, and what was the rationale of the merger?
So let me give you a perspective on Assam. Assam, when the announcement was not there, the collection efficiency had dipped down to about 30-odd%. Post the announcement, which has been announced now, and it's probably been about 1.5 to 2 months since all this activity has taken place in the. I think somebody will have to mute it. Anyway, so from a 30% collection efficiency before the announcement, post the announcement, the collection efficiency is inching up to now. It has reached close to about 52% odd. And this I'm talking of practically the last week as such. So it is inching up slowly. In terms of when this is going to be, it'll get formalized, the drafts are getting ready. I think, the preparations are there. What time it'll take, we probably do not have a fair idea about it, but what we can say on the ground and whatever we are looking at in terms of the engagement which is happening with the state government, I think it's going to be happening sooner than later. So that is this is on the Assam front. In terms of the reason why we wanted to merge both these entities, see, one thing which we really want to now state out is that I think it's been very difficult for I think a lot of people to really understand the monetization aspect of our subsidiaries, and I think that is probably one of the reasons. It's not because there was any challenge in terms of this. The AUM for Taraashna was 643 crores at some point of time, and also and this was before the pandemic. And also as a BC as a model, we feel that it has done adequate justice to what, and we had brought in about 4 to 5 years back, when we started this whole model. We feel that the leverage of capital by both the merged entities and also a platform of being an NBFC when the both entities merge will bode very well for the merged entity technically rather than splitting them across. So capital leverage in terms of verticals, leverage in terms of products, leverage in terms of being the entity which will become an NBFC rather than splitting into two entities which was a non-NBFC and an NBFC. I think all these factors will bode very well for the merged entities to do business together. The merged entity will also have the BC business as well as its own book business of MSME retail lending. So the synergies which will probably bring in and the revenue and as well as the baseline profitability which will probably emerge of both the merged entities is going to be far more better than what it was when we were looking at both these entities separately.
Sure, sir, sure. And in post-merger, we will not have any problem in having a qualifying asset criteria of 85% needs to be. So this MSME retail business will also be part of the MFI book, right?
No. So this is separate. This is a separate subsidiary which doesn't have anything to do with the qualifying asset of what the microfinance, the parent company does. So no qualifying asset challenges over there.
Sure. And lastly, what is the interest rate that we are charging on the microfinance loan? Just from a harmonization of guidelines perspective, if the spread cap is removed, do we see a potential of improvement in our spreads?
See, I think we are looking at it from a very positive angle. I cannot really comment on what the interest spreads would be, but definitely yes, that whole negativity about a margin cap of about 10%, which was embroiled earlier into the microfinance book, will probably be taken away. So once that is taken away, I think the market dynamics works, and we feel that if the market dynamics work, I think the interest rate, whatever we are subject to right now because of the margin cap, it will have maybe some enhancement somewhere or the other, which will take care of our credit cost in the near future. That is what we are looking at from a positive side right now, which is difficult because you have a margin cap which is enforced. So we're looking at from an angle where we feel that there's going to be positivity in terms of our bottom line as well as our revenue coming in.
Sure. Thank you, sir. That's it from my side.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Participants, to ask a question, please press star, then 1. The next question is from the line of Aditi Sawant from ADM Advisors. Please go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. So I have one question. Are we planning any further capital raise going ahead? I mean, knowing the fact that we have raised 120 crores via right issue. So if yes, what kind of capital raise would that be?
See, Aditi, to be very honest, we're just finishing off our last call of our rights issue. So if we really look in the near term, which is a question of about a couple of months from now, I think we have sufficient capital to really look at if we are looking at the budgeted base of increasing our growth to about 8% this year. So that way we are fully capitalized to take care of the growth for this year. I really have no handle right now to give you a very clear answer as to why if we are looking at a capital raise in the near future. It could be possibly be yes, but nothing which is fructified and there in the cards. We want to first bring stability into our collections as well as start disbursements the way we were doing it before the pandemic. Once that comes in, I think it will take a call at that point of time. But definitely yes, capital adequately enough for us to look at an 8% growth this year.
Okay. That's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Participants, to ask a question, please press star, then 1. The next question is from the line of Amit Shah from Ace Securities. Please go ahead.
Hello.
Hi, Amit. Yes.
Hi. Good morning, sir. Sir, I have a couple of questions, sir. Sir, we have disbursement close to 282 crores in this quarter. So, sir, how are the disbursement activities in the current quarter?
So I just gave you in my remarks, so it was 222 crores for the whole quarter. 282 for the whole quarter. And in July, we did a disbursement of close to about 260 odd crores. So the way it is picking on, the whole quarter was probably done in 1 month. and the disbursements have started picking up, and I think, I said it in CNBC today morning also, we're looking at probably a good quarter, coming in from September onwards, but once, all these restrictions coming back into the efficiency, livelihoods coming back into full scale as such, disbursement will see, I think, the pre-COVID levels sometime in September onwards,
Okay. So when can we expect these to inch to pre-COVID levels?
I said September.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Devendra Pandey from DP Financial Advisors. Please go ahead.
Thanks for the opportunity and good morning, sir. So my first question is on the restructuring. So we have restructured around 43 crores of assets in 2.0. So how much further we are expecting to restructure the portfolio in 2.0?
See, we've done 18,000, which was close to about 40 crores, in the first one, We're still looking at it, technically we've additionally deployed a lot of human resources on the field, to reach out to customers and get our installments back, But normally what happens is once you have a backlog of about 4 to 8 installments, it becomes kind of challenging for customers to really repay the whole installments in one go. The tail gets slightly bigger. But we are aware of the situation, and let's see, how much we would like to restructure again in September. But right now we are giving it a shot that, as the collection efficiency improves, I think, we'll see how the numbers will probably come around sometime in September or so.
Okay. And few states are under, stricter lockdowns compared to other states. So how is the collection efficiency in those states?
The collection efficiency all across is better, so, just to give you maybe a added cover onto that, if you look at, and this is related to the earlier question which you asked in terms of the further restructuring, See, the benchmark figure which, we've stated out earlier is non-paying clients are just 5.1% in June 21, which is a very heartening sign, technically 5% of the people where there might be an issue of maybe an ability not to pay or maybe of I probably should not be saying it, but maybe of an intent not to pay. But 5.1% of the total EM is pretty less as compared to what we've gone through in this wave, So our own sense is that I think, technically, if this is there, then I think, collection efficiency all across has been picked up to a large extent, and we definitely will try and look at, that it comes back to the, as I said, back to the pre-COVID levels in September.
Okay. And sir, non-paying customers have increased from 1% in March to 5% in June. So how do we see there? Is it going to increase? Is it going to stabilize? Is it going to reduce going forward? What's your view on that?
So it's going to reduce, definitely. It will not increase.
Okay. And sir, there is an expectation of third wave probably, and we all hope that it doesn't come. But in the worst case it comes, how positioned are we? What are we going to do different this time if at all it comes?
See, our own indications on the ground is, I think, the whole brunt came in the second wave. We have a feeling and a very strong feeling because since we are, closer to the ground, we don't adequately work on the data figures, what the government of India has prescribed. But definitely on the ground, there is no probable indication of a third wave. And don't hold me against it, probably to be very honest, but we are feeling that is not going to be there. And even if it comes, it's going to be very mild, which does not affect the way it has probably affected us in the second wave, And second wave, we are fully provided for, technically. Third wave, even if it comes, even if it's a mild one, we probably do not have much to really, lose about in terms of the way we've actually structured and put in additional manpower and looking at the complete way we are handling all the DPD buckets, We feel, I think, this probably is not going to affect us in the coming few quarters,
Got it, sir. Thanks, sir. I will join the question queue if I have any further questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the last question. I now hand the conference over to the management for closing comments.
Hi, good morning again. I take this opportunity to thank everyone for joining on this call, and I hope we've been able to address all your queries. For any further information, kindly get in touch with me. My name is Aditi Singh. I handle the investor relations for Satin, or you can also get in touch with Strategic Growth Advisors or SGA, who are our investor relation advisors. Thank you. Stay healthy, stay safe. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Satin Creditcare Network Limited, that concludes this conference. We thank you all for joining us, and you may now disconnect your lines.